Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Weekly F1 Wrap Up with Jess. This is actually going to be a two-parter. In part one, my good friend Allison and I are going to be just having a chat about F1, how we got into F1, a bit of our backgrounds and a bit of things like that. And then in part two, we're going to dive into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix and give you our analysis on that. So I hope you enjoy.
So, back to Formula One.
What in the
shit
hell
show.
was it?
Just a pre-warning to anyone listening, this is probably going to be a really unhinged podcast because I don't think there's ever been a time where you and I have been hinged in like the 12-year history of our friendship.
I thought it was closer to 15.
It probably is. You know I can't math.
Yeah, it was 2008. We're in 2023. Get it together.
Oh my God, it is 15. And through that, luckily, we both seem to fall in love with Formula One.
Oh, yeah.
In the last few years. That was the most bizarre thing, I think, for both of us, was just like catching up and being like, hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? Having a chat and then being like, oh, yeah, I've really gotten into Formula One lately.
It's like,
that's
same.
Bizarre. So have I.
What are the chances?
Is it the trauma that makes people turn to Formula One, do you think?
I have no idea, but there seems to be a significant correlation between girls who liked One Direction and girls who now follow Formula One.
Really? Well, that's interesting because you know me, I was never a 1D fan.
I'm still holding out for that reunion.
I mean, if it comes, I'll be cheering you on, but it just was never my scene. That said, Harry Styles, love Harry Styles. I don't know what it is about Formula One. I think you know me, and you know you were literally there when I went to my first ever V8 race. When I was like 12 and I came back and told you about it. And it was, for me, I was like 11 or 12. I was only young, maybe even 10 actually. And it was just boring as shit to me at that age.
Yeah.
Because I mean that was before, you know, the technology and like advancements that we've had up until now, but like the cars were in front of you and then they're away from you and they're not as fast as a Formula One car, so that you'd be without a car for like minutes. You'd be sitting there like, well, this is fucking boring.
What do I do in the meantime? Like,
Yeah, I always loved cars because that's what my dad and I bonded over, but I never got into it the same way as Formula One. Like I just never understood. I could appreciate the Formula One. Sorry, I could appreciate the V8 drivers, but I never got into the sport as much as Formula One. I actually realized I don't think you've mentioned on your podcast like what got you into Formula One.
You.
Me?
You, yeah.
How me? Like when I went to the Grand Prix last year.
Yeah. You honestly looked like you were
really?
having a ball of a time. And
I
I was like, what the fuck? When is this bitch into fucking race cars? And then you look like you're having such a great time. And I was like, okay.
I've still got the video of like Lewis Hamilton giving Tom the thumbs up because Tom was like bowing to him in the front row because he's knighted. Like, and so Tom was like, I have to bow. And Lewis saw it and was like, oh, and I gave him a thumbs up. And honestly, it was like the highlight because we were like, oh my God, we got acknowledged.
Oh, that would be great. But yeah, no, you look like you're having such a great time. And I was like, what the fuck?
I want to get on that train.
Not even. I was like, I'm just going to watch the race and see what this is about. And then
like, oh
I watched
God,
the race.
The most amazing thing in the world.
And I was like, hot guys driving fast cars. This is what I've been about since I was about 6. How did I not get into this earlier?
I know, right? Yeah, well, like I was saying before, like I always watched the V8s with my dad because he's a huge car fan and he loves his cars. I think he's got a few more cars now, I don't even know. And I went and saw the V8s in like 2010 or something, and it just wasn't, I don't know, I didn't enjoy it as much, and so I kind of didn't get into car races after that because it just wasn't as enjoyable. And then like my partner Tom watches pretty much every sport there is possible. Like he loves everything, and he was watching the Formula One night and he was like, do you want to watch it with me? And I sat down and it was the 2021 Italian Grand Prix.
Oh, Monza.
Our very own Danny Rick from McLaren like got that win. And it was honestly the beginning because I was already so invested because there was only one Australian driver and he's like such an iconic, like everyone knows the name Daniel Ricciardo even if they don't watch Formula One. They're like, oh, I know that name. Like, so like to actually see his first, like his McLaren win was just, I was over the moon. And pretty much I watched it and I went to bed like literally buzzing as if I was Daniel. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, this is so exciting. Like the adrenaline, and that race was like crazy.
Oh, I know.
And I started to just like the next time it was playing at a decent hour, again, Tom and I stayed up, we watched it, and we just continued that for a good while. And then, yeah, the moment it was coming back to Australia, Melbourne, even though we had absolutely no confirmation to be going ahead, because at that time COVID regulations were still saying that they could still cancel it, or they might not even be allowed into the country. I bought tickets. I spent over $1,000, got us the most amazing seats in the Daniel Ricciardo stand, because I couldn't not for the first GP we went to. And thankfully, bless every possible God and everything that happened, it went ahead and it was so fun, and we bought merch, and then of course we had to go again this year, and this year's GP was like,
Absolutely
what a train wreck.
My Lord.
What a train wreck. I mean, it was brilliant.
I feel like I
but
still need to go back
still,
and watch the version like that was broadcast, because I'm like,
I could literally show you the videos that I took from my grandstand,
yeah,
because I was in the Jones grandstand, like on the first turn,
yeah,
where all the cars just happened to simultaneously go off, and it was just, and I mean, like, we were really lucky. We were situated around people who, like you and I, were really invested in the sport. So we were talking, we're like, they've been off track, they've been in the pit lanes for like 10 minutes now, the sun's setting, the tires are cold, the track's cold, the engines are going cold, like everything's cold. This is going to be a really interesting new lap that we're about to, restart, new lap we're about to have. Like, it's going to be really, really interesting. And next minute, everyone's off the track.
absolutely.
Cars are crashing. Carlos is dropped from like, I can't even remember what he
I
was
think
in, but
like
suddenly
P4.
he was P4, I think. He wasn't P3, but he was just behind it. And suddenly, it was like crazy. It was such a crazy GP. And considering that might be the last Oz GP that Tom and I go to, just because, like, as much as it's fun, it is expensive. It's a very expensive weekend that you're investing in, as you now know. I think we've done it twice. We've experienced it as novices, and we've now experienced it as, I wouldn't say experts, but like we've gone twice. So we've been there as newbies, and we've been there as people have been before. We've seen everything it has to offer. I think like next year we'll be really content and watching it from the comfort of our homes. But I mean, to be honest, if Daniel Ricciardo is back on grid, it wouldn't be long before we decide that we're going back down again.
Look, if even I'll probably go next year. I'll go down. But I'm like, I'm looking at 4 Grand Prix this year.
That would be fantastic.
I've down 3 to go.
I haven't told Tom, because I know he's going to call me a moron for wasting money, but I've bought $20 worth of entries into a raffle to potentially go to Monaco, because I was like, I can't afford Monaco. That's like $80,000. Like, it's so expensive. I was like, but if someone else wants to pay for it.
I looked into Monaco, and like the grandstand, where you look up the straight, and the chicane coming out of the tunnel and along the marina.
I know.
And I was like, and they're like the worst seats, and I was like, oh my God. And then I've still got to get accommodation. And
yeah, I was gonna say, and then your accommodation is like $15,000 for that weekend.
I mean, you could just stay in Nice, which would be cheaper, and then get the train over. But I was like,
but then you've got to do your commuting, and like if you're only there for that weekend and you're jet lagged and you've got all that commuting in another country, like it can be so confusing. I was like, I don't want to do that. If I'm going to go to Monaco, I'm going to go, either someone else is paying for it, so I don't have to worry about it, or if I'm going to go to Monaco, it'll be like that thing where we go over, we do a massive big like holiday that happens to just like incorporate Monaco in it.
Yeah.
But like even then, like it's still so expensive. But I know Japan is definitely on the table for Tom and I, because we want to travel Japan. So I've kind of hinted at traveling and touring Japan at the same time, the Grand Prix there, so we can see the Japanese circuit.
Yeah, that'd be good. Suzuka is a good circuit.
Sonoda is one of our favorites, just because off track he is the most polite, beautiful, charming young man. And the moment he's behind a car, he's like, shut the fuck up and let me focus. And I just love that. And it only occurred to me the other night when I was watching the Baku race when he was doing it, and I was thinking of talking to you, that I went, oh my God, Sonoda reminds me of Jess. Because throughout our entire childhood friendship, like 1 second, you're like, Allison, you'd be so soft spoken, like, Allison, can you do this? And if I were like, no, I can't do it, you're like, shut the fuck up and do it already.
My ability.
I was like, oh, I love Sonoda because he's my Jeff.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. It's a compliment. It's a compliment in the highest order.
So yeah, I mean, I'm going to Silverstone.
I know.
That's
I'm a
already
bit
done
jealous, if I'm
and
honest.
booked. And then I was also, as you saw on my TikTok probably, looking at booking
Miami?
Singapore.
No, Singapore. And weren't you also looking, not Miami, because Miami's next, but Las Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
I really
Look
want
at
to
you
do it.
go. And
I'm
that seems to be the track that everyone's most keen
And I
about.
was
Like, whenever they talk about it, they're like, I want to get to Las Vegas. So the race would be so good because everyone's motivation would be so.
And I'm also like, it's the first Vegas Grand Prix. It's going to be good. It's going to be epic. They're going to go all out to launch it. But what I find really odd is when I was looking at the grandstand map, only half of the track is what you're able to view. And I just thought that was really weird. Like, there's only grandstands on one half of it.
Yeah.
The entire back straight, you can't get a look at. You've only got them up the side and around along the front of the pit. So your seating options are actually pretty limited from what I could tell looking at the map.
I don't know how I feel about that. They're going to have cameras literally everywhere for that kind of race.
And like big screens everywhere so you can actually see what's going on.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to show a good half of the track or have
that's the one thing with the Oz GP, like they have screens everywhere and they're big screens, like you can see what's happening. But I think with the sun rising and setting during the day, they probably need to make their screens a tiny bit bigger, just because we couldn't even see the screen in front of us for half
Mine
the
is
race.
actually in a really good spot because
in the Danny Ricciardo stand, your TV where it is like so good. Like we had that spot last time and we were like, wow, this is fantastic. But in the Jones stand directly across us, our screen would be completely blurred by the sun for like the morning into early afternoon. And you'd have to like squint and then you'd have to look at the other TV that was like on a bit of an angle from you. And you're like, what does it even say?
What is happening?
We couldn't see the score. We couldn't see the leaderboard at all during the races. We had to look it up on our phone because we could not read the leaderboards.
Oh my God.
Which is why I really think they need to like incorporate getting just like a slightly bigger screen around the track, because we just couldn't read the leaderboard at all. Like we could make out colors and be like, well, that's definitely a Ferrari and that's definitely I think that's a V. I think that's Verstappen on top. I'd be surprised if it wasn't Verstappen, but like that's pretty much all you got. Yeah. He's like 30 minutes start from everyone else. But at the same time, like you look at Formula 2 and Formula 3, and they have regulations that mean that all the cars are the exact same, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the car. It's all about the driving ability in the Formula 2 and 3, but then our Formula 1's different. I mean, that's what makes it such a competitive sport, I guess. Like we don't watch it because the cars are the same. We watch it because we want to see how the cars being different, what they can do. But at the same time, I'm still like...
And I think they brought the cost cap in to try and even things out amongst the top 10 teams. But it's not really having the desired effect. Like Red Bull,
I don't think so.
Are just still so far ahead. Ferrari's reliability issues.
If you've got a problem with your car, then change your fucking car.
You've got a problem, change your fucking car. Oh, iconic.
I found that just so, I don't know. It was funny, but at the same time, it's like, Christian, you've had the dominating car for years. Like,
Toto.
You have whatever Toto too. But like in the last few years, Red Bull have dominated.
Oh yeah.
I understand like Toto, he had it all for a bit, but like it's funny, but at the same time it's like, please shut up. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's really funny for me to watch, but at the same time, like there were so many other drivers who'd be sitting there being like, we change our car every season. Like,
oh yeah.
You can't tell me to change my car when I am changing my car and there's nothing happening and you just change it and you keep winning. Like it would also be really insulting to some of the other team principals who are like, can you shut up? We're doing all we can.
Yeah, we only have a certain amount of cash. We have a cost cap, but our
Yeah.
budget's nowhere near going to be able to reach it.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Like, I think when I watched it, I laughed because I just enjoy I just enjoyed the rivalry between Toto and Christian.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I also got really, really frustrated for the other drivers who, again, are lower on the grid. Like, sorry, the other team principals who are low on the grid, and they'd be sitting there looking at this, going, like, this is so not
Petty.
rude or disrespectful. Yeah, but like, it's also just that little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. A little bit inconsiderate. Because like they
Yeah.
are putting in the work and they are changing their cars, but they're not being like, it's not being acknowledged, and it was a double-edged sword in some ways, because it's hilarious, it's so funny, but at the same time you're like, well, that's really not fair to the other people who have to sit there and embarrass your really awkward little lovers tiff. Like,
yes, you're the two top
anyway.
teams. It's not all about you. Let's move on. And you can see that on the
Yeah,
other driver, like the other team principals' faces. Like, oh, come on, guys, let's move on. We have
I
other things
know.
to talk about.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I think they get so worked up because they like, let's be real. The internet is all over them. Like, the internet loves
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that, like, when it comes to Toto, Gunther, and Christian, they just think, oh, everyone wants to see me. And I do think sometimes the other team principal is like, it's not all about you. Yes, you can go be, the public's number one, but when it comes to actual F1 things, it's not all about your teams. Like, it's not all about you. We have really amazing drivers. We have a car that we're working so hard on. I'm putting in countless amounts of hours and I'm not getting sleep because of these cars. It just seems like you guys can only focus on you and talk about you. And, like, I don't know, it's just really painful to watch at the same time.
I can't get into it. I know, because I know what's going to happen. And I watched up until the episode where Gunther absolutely shits on Mick. And I'm like, I cannot physically sit
I didn't even watch that.
And watch the downfall of Danny.
I haven't even, to be honest, I haven't even watched Drive to Survive. I've just watched like random episodes through the seasons. Whenever Tom watches it, I sit down and watch a bit. I watched the last one the other day, so like with Danny Rick, and that was really sweet. Like, it pulls your heartstrings a little bit because he is beloved by everyone.
Oh yeah.
But I haven't even sat down to watch a full season of it because I've just seen clips on like social media, on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm like, this is just sometimes people say things and it's just ridiculous.
Well, I made the mistake last year when I was getting into Formula One after the Australian Grand Prix, and I sat down and I watched that, and I watched Imola the week after, 2 weeks after, something like that. I sat down one day on a weekend and I watched the entire season of Drive to Survive based on the 2021 season.
Yeah.
And at that point, having limited knowledge, I was heavily influenced in who I liked and who I didn't, and how I perceived certain drivers.
Yeah,
and
100%.
I came away from that absolutely hating Max. I wasn't a fan of Lando. Charles and Carlos, I just was like, okay, you two think you're the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
George was just like crying after he scored his first points at Williams, and I was like, get it together, my guy, come on. I was like,
oh my god. I think that's why I'm glad I've never watched it, because I don't want to be influenced, and I've noticed a few people like can be really heavily influenced.
Yeah, and then I'm glad I kept going with the sport and getting to know the drivers, because my perspective from a year ago has completely changed. Like, Max and Lando are my favorites, my little chums.
I know. And I think, like, I didn't like Max in the first season that I watched, like, of 2020 and then into 2021. Like, when I looked at all the races and stuff, I was like, I don't like him. He's so rude. He's so competitive. Like, there's no sportsmanship. And then as time went on, I was like, this kid's been racing since he was like 3. Like, this is literally all he lives and breathes. And even at Baku, when that whole thing with George Russell came up, I was really angry at the way, George Russell approached to apologize and say, I'm so sorry, this is what it's the sport, this happens. Max getting angry was really childish.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I can see why he's frustrated. Like, they've got a race the next day and, car's damaged. It was really worrying. Like, he could have done so much more damage to the car, which could potentially affect whether he gets to race or not. I could totally see why he was frustrated, but I just think
the way he went about it.
snapping publicly, being really childish and being just a bit of a dick didn't do well for him, like in his
His
what's the
image.
word I'm looking for? His image, exactly. It didn't do well for his image. And then I think the way that he conducted those interviews when he's asked about it, he was like, oh, he's really good at making excuses. I was just like, this is so inappropriate.
Well, he
So
even went
not needed
on.
for your image. You need to just stand back in those when it comes to the interviews and someone says, how do you feel about this? I think that's the time where the drivers need to turn back and just go, it's just a part of the game. Like, it's a part of the race. Like, you're gonna have crashes, you're gonna have contact, you're gonna have damage to the car. It's literally a part of the race. It's a part of the sport. And I just think he didn't handle it well.
I think a lot of
personally,
what Max was, how he acted, I don't support it in any way, shape or form. He should not have approached George the way he did in Parc Ferme and called him a dickhead and had a go at him.
I know, it was so childish.
But I also think the way that it was so childish is because of the way he was raised. And it goes back to him
100%.
being, I mean, even if, I know it's a meme and everything, but you go back to that thing with Charles Leclerc when they were kids in karting, and it's his perspective then and what it is now is very much still the same.
And you're right, and it comes from a childhood grounding. Like he's had that mentality grounded in his mind since he would have first hopped behind the wheel of anything, like when in the go-karts at 3. Like, that would have been his mentality from then, and there's no changing that. It's just unfortunate.
And Joss himself has given Max no other option, even in his Max's
honestly needs a good smack across the head with the way he treats his son. Like, it just, I absolutely hate watching videos of Max winning and his dad standing there just like and gives him like a tap on the shoulder. I'm like, he has just won a race. I've seen Checo's dad
absolutely
run up
over
to Max, and there is like an in-house rivalry between Max and Checo, and even Checo's dad was like, oh my god, you did it, you're so good, I'm so proud of you, like, well done. I was like, that's how any parent in Formula One would be. If I had a child there and someone else won, I'd be running up, because it's what you do as a parent. The moment someone wins, even if it's not your kid, you're still like, I am so proud of you, you've done the work. And he just gets none of that from his dad.
No. And even when he got his medal, last year, his dad wasn't even there. Christian was the one who was sitting there being the proud dad figure, taking photos and videos of Max with his, his new medal and everything. But Joss was nowhere to be seen. And that, I know. It doesn't excuse his behaviour, but I think because he is, 24, 25 years old now, he should know better. And
I think it doesn't excuse his behaviour, but it blames why he's like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't excuse it. So you can look at his behaviour and go, I understand why you're doing that, but I don't appreciate that you're doing it.
Exactly.
Well, that's all for this part, guys. I hope you enjoyed and that you will join us for part 2, where we dive into our analysis of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.